I was betrayed. My mother-in-law helped me get justice. Hi. I'm Jessica Thompson. I'm 27 years old and I work as a nurse in Austin, Texas, and I'm about to tell you the most shocking story of my life. A story about betrayal, revenge, and the most unexpected alliance I never saw coming. I used to have what everyone called the perfect life. A beautiful house in Austin, Texas, that my husband, Daniel, and I built together with our own hands. 5 years of marriage to a successful construction businessman. A stable routine as a nurse at the local hospital. We had plans, dreams. We were trying for a baby. But you know what they say about perfect lives, right? They're usually hiding the darkest secrets. It all started falling apart on a Tuesday night. Daniel came home late again, claiming he was working on a big project. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. I wasn't the type to snoop, but something made me look. "Chloe, can't wait to see you tomorrow at the gym, baby." This is getting harder to hide. My blood turned to ice. My hands were shaking as I read message after message, each one more devastating than the last. My husband of 5 years was having an affair with some woman named Chloe from his gym. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. I thought my biggest ally would be my best friend, maybe my sister. But in the end, the person who stood by me was the one I least expected. My mother-in-law, Linda. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why that made all the difference. Welcome to Revenge Cat. We reveal gripping stories of broken trust, family secrets, and shocking twists. If you crave powerful narratives, intense emotions, and the sweet taste of justice, this is your place. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Let me take you back to the beginning, when everything seemed normal. Daniel and I met in college. He was charming, ambitious, and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. After graduation, he started his construction company, and I became a nurse. We were the perfect team. When we got married 5 years ago, Linda welcomed me with open arms. She was this strong, no-nonsense woman who raised Daniel as a single mother after his father left. I respected her, and I thought she respected me too. But you never really know someone until crisis hits. The first red flag should have been obvious. 3 months ago, Daniel suddenly became obsessed with fitness. This man who used to complain about walking to the mailbox was suddenly at the gym every single day. "I need to stay in shape for work," he'd say. "Gotta look professional for clients." Then came the new clothes. Designer shirts, expensive cologne, haircuts every 2 weeks. When I complimented him, he'd just shrugged and changed the subject. But the worst part, the distance. We went from being best friends who shared everything to strangers living in the same house. He'd come to bed after I was already asleep, leave before I woke up. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd get defensive. "Jessica, you're being paranoid. I'm working hard for us, for our future." I wanted to believe him. I really did. That Tuesday night changed everything. After seeing Chloe's message, I couldn't sleep. I waited until Daniel was snoring, then carefully took his phone to the bathroom. What I found broke me completely. Hundreds of messages between them. Photos I can't unsee. Plans to meet at hotels while I was working double shifts at the hospital, saving lives and thinking about our future together. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was what she was doing to him. "Chloe, when are you going to leave her? I'm tired of being your secret." "Daniel, soon, baby. I just need to figure out the finances." "Chloe, well, figure it out fast. That house you built with her. I want us to live there, and I think you should sell some of those investments you made together. I have some debts that need paying." This woman wasn't just stealing my husband. She was planning to take everything we'd built together. Everything I had worked for. Everything I had sacrificed for. I sat on that bathroom floor and cried until I had no tears left. 5 years of marriage, reduced to a financial transaction for his mistress. I spent the next week in a fog. I'd go to work, take care of patients, smile when people asked how I was doing. But inside, I was dying. Part of me wanted to confront Daniel immediately, throw his phone in his face, scream until my voice gave out. But something held me back. Maybe it was the nurse in me, always thinking strategically, always planning the best course of action. Or maybe I was just scared. Scared that confronting him would make it real. Scared that our marriage was truly over. Instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how he'd disappear for hours on weekends, claiming he was checking job sites. How he'd shower the moment he got home, even if he'd supposedly been sitting in an office all day. How he'd take phone calls in the garage, speaking in whispers. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I found a receipt in his pocket while doing laundry. A fancy restaurant downtown, dinner for two. The same night he'd told me he was working late and grabbed fast food. $200 for dinner. While I was eating leftover pizza and watching Netflix alone. That's when I knew I couldn't handle this by myself. I needed to tell someone. But who? My best friend Sarah was going through her own divorce. My sister lived across the country. My parents would just say work it out. Like they always did. Then, in a moment of complete desperation, I called Linda. Linda, can we talk? I mean, really talk. I met my mother-in-law at a small cafe downtown, far from Daniel's usual haunts. I was terrified. What if she didn't believe me? What if she sided with her son? What if this backfired completely? Linda arrived wearing her usual no-nonsense expression, her silver hair perfectly styled, her eyes sharp and observant. She ordered coffee black and sat across from me with the patience of someone who'd seen everything life had to offer. What's wrong, Jessica? You look like you haven't slept in weeks. I took a deep breath and told her everything. The messages, the receipts, the lies, the way Chloe was manipulating Daniel to essentially steal from me. I expected her to defend him, to find excuses, to tell me I was overreacting. Instead, Linda's face went through a series of emotions I'll never forget. Surprise, disappointment, and then rage. Pure, maternal rage. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she looked up, her eyes were blazing. That little bastard, she said quietly. I raised him better than this. I blinked in shock. Linda. I know, Jessica. Listen to me. She leaned forward, her voice fierce but controlled. I've watched you love my son for 5 years. I've seen you support his business, work double shifts to help with mortgage payments, take care of him when he was sick, put up with his moods and his stubbornness. You're the best thing that ever happened to him. Tears started flowing down my cheeks. I hadn't expected this support, this immediate, unwavering loyalty. And now he's throwing it all away for some gold-digging gym bunny. Linda shook her head. Over my dead body. That's when I knew I wasn't alone anymore. That's when our plan began to form. Linda and I spent the next 2 hours plotting. She knew Daniel better than anyone. His weaknesses, his blind spots, his tells when he was lying. More importantly, she knew how to get information out of him without raising suspicion. He's always been terrible at keeping secrets from me, Linda explained. Even as a kid, he'd confess to everything the moment I gave him that look. Some things never change. Our plan was simple but effective. 1. Linda would casually bring up the topic of marriage and commitment during their weekly lunch. See what Daniel revealed. 2. I would continue documenting everything. Screenshots, receipts, anything that proved the affair and Chloe's manipulation. 3. We'd gather enough evidence to protect my interests in a divorce and expose Daniel's betrayal to the family. 4. Most importantly, we'd make sure Chloe got nothing. That woman thinks she can manipulate my son and steal from my daughter-in-law, Linda said, her voice steady as steel. She's about to learn what happens when you mess with this family. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Not hope that my marriage could be saved. That ship had sailed. but hoped that I wouldn't go down without a fight. The next 2 weeks were like living a double life. During the day, I was Jessica, the caring wife, asking about Daniel's work, bringing him coffee, acting normal. At night, I was Jessica, the detective, carefully documenting every lie, every suspicious behavior, every piece of evidence. Linda was incredible. She'd call Daniel, asking innocent questions about his schedule, his new fitness routine, his plans for the weekend. Then she'd report back to me with information that helped me track his movements. "He's meeting someone at the Hilton downtown this Friday," she'd text me. "Says he's having drinks with the client." Sure enough, I'd drive by and see his truck in the parking lot of the hotel restaurant. I'd take photos, note the time, add it to my growing file of evidence. The screenshots were the most damaging. Daniel had gotten careless, leaving his phone unlocked while he showered or ran errands. I discovered that Chloe wasn't just pushing him to leave me. She was actively trying to sabotage our marriage. "Chloe, you need to start fights with Jessica. Make her think the problems are her fault. It'll be easier to leave her if she's the crazy one." "Daniel, I don't know. She doesn't deserve that." "Chloe, do you want to be with me or not? Because I'm not waiting forever. And I'm definitely not going to be poor while you figure out your guilt." Reading those messages, I realized Chloe was even worse than I thought. She wasn't just a woman who fell for a married man. She was calculating, manipulative, and willing to destroy my mental health to get what she wanted. That's when Linda and I decided it was time to accelerate our plan. Linda suggested we have a family dinner. "Nothing suspicious," she said. "Just a normal Sunday dinner like we used to have. I'll invite Daniel's brother Mark and his wife, maybe his cousin Tom. Make it feel natural." The dinner was set for the following Sunday. Linda insisted on hosting at her house, which was perfect. Daniel would be relaxed, comfortable, unsuspecting. I spent that week preparing. Not just the evidence, but myself, emotionally. This was going to be the end of my marriage. The end of life as I knew it. But it was also going to be the beginning of something new. Sunday arrived, gray and rainy, which felt appropriate for what was about to happen. I dressed carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. I wanted to look strong, composed, dignified. Daniel was in a good mood. Probably because he'd spent Saturday with Chloe. He even complimented my dress, kissed my cheek before we left the house. The audacity was breathtaking. At Linda's house, the family gathered around her big dining room table. Mark and his wife Sarah were there, along with Tom and his girlfriend. Everyone was laughing, sharing stories, catching up on family news. Daniel was relaxed, charming, playing the role of devoted husband perfectly. He held my hand, called me honey, even made a joke about how hard I'd been working at the hospital. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed the performance too. After dinner, Linda stood up to clear the dishes. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying a strange tone that made everyone look up. "Before we have dessert, Jessica has something she'd like to share with everyone." The room went quiet. Daniel looked confused, maybe a little worried. "Jessica, what's going on?" I took a deep breath, reached into my purse, and pulled out a folder. My hands were steady. My voice was clear. "I wanted you all to know," I said, looking directly at Daniel, "that I'll be filing for divorce this week." The silence was deafening. Daniel's face went white. "What? Jessica, what are you talking about?" Instead of answering, I opened the folder and spread the contents across Linda's dining room table. Screenshots of messages, photos of Daniel's truck at various hotels, receipts from restaurants and gifts I never received. "I know about Chloe," I said simply. "I know about the affair. I know about her plans to move into our house, to take half of everything we built together. I know about all of it." Daniel started to stand, started to stammer some explanation, but Linda's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Sit down, Daniel." Her tone was one I'd never heard before. Maternal authority mixed with disappointment so deep it made the room feel cold. Sit down. He sat. Mom, I can explain, Daniel started, but Linda held up her hand. Oh, you're going to explain. All right. You're going to explain to your entire family how you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you for some gold-digging Jim Bunny. Mark and the others were staring in shock, looking between the evidence on the table and Daniel's increasingly pale face. You're going to explain, Linda continued, her voice rising, how you planned to sell the house that Jessica helped you build. How you were ready to liquidate investments that she contributed to, all so your mistress could pay off her debts. It's not like that, Daniel protested weakly. It's exactly like that. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. It's all right here. In your own words. You and Chloe planning my financial ruin while I worked double shifts to support our future. I pulled out my phone and played one of the voice messages I'd managed to record. Daniel's voice filled the room. I know it's hard, babe, but Jessica won't fight the divorce if we play it right. She's not the type to make a scene. We can get the house, liquidate some of the investments, start fresh together. The voice message ended. The room was so quiet you could hear the rain against Linda's windows. Tom was the first to speak. Dude, what the hell is wrong with you? Mark just shook his head in disgust. His wife Sarah, not my friend Sarah, Daniel's sister-in-law Sarah, looked at me with tears in her eyes. Jessica, I'm so sorry. But it was Linda's reaction that mattered most. She walked around the table, stood behind my chair, and placed her hands on my shoulders. Let me be very clear about something, Daniel, she said, her voice deadly calm. Jessica is not just your wife. She's my daughter. She's been part of this family for 5 years, and that doesn't end just because you've lost your mind. She squeezed my shoulders gently. If you think you're going to humiliate her, steal from her, and destroy her while I stand by and watch, you've forgotten who raised you. Daniel looked like he was going to be sick. Mom, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you fell for a woman who sees dollar signs when she looks at you. How you were willing to betray someone who loved you unconditionally. How you were ready to steal from the woman who helped you build everything you have. Linda's voice broke slightly on that last part, and I realized she was as heartbroken as I was. Daniel wasn't just betraying his wife. He was betraying the values she'd tried to instill in him. That's when Daniel made his biggest mistake. Instead of apologizing, instead of taking responsibility, he got defensive. You don't understand. Chloe loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. It's different with her. It's real. The room erupted. Mark stood up so fast his chair fell over. Tom started swearing. Linda's hands tightened on my shoulders. But I was the one who delivered the killing blow. Real, I laughed, and even I was surprised by how bitter it sounded. Daniel, show them the message where she called you a walking ATM with commitment issues. His face went white. He'd forgotten about that message, buried in hundreds of others. But I hadn't forgotten. I'd saved it. I pulled out my phone and read it aloud. Your husband is such an easy mark, babe. Walking ATM with commitment issues. The sex isn't even that good, but the financial potential makes it worth it. Once we get the house and some of those investments liquidated, I might actually start enjoying myself. The silence that followed was devastating. Daniel looked like I'd physically slapped him. That's not. She didn't mean ... He stuttered. She didn't mean it. I stood up, feeling more powerful than I had in years. Daniel, she's been laughing about you behind your back while planning to take everything we built together. And you were going to let her do it. As if the evening couldn't get more dramatic, Linda's doorbell rang. She looked at me and smiled. The kind of smile that meant trouble. Oh, I invited one more person to dinner. She walked to the front door and returned with Chloe herself. Chloe was exactly what I'd expected. Blonde, gym-toned, wearing an outfit that cost more than my monthly car payment. She walked into the dining room with the confidence of someone who thought she was about to claim her prize. Hey, baby, she said to Daniel, completely ignoring the rest of us. Your mom said you wanted to introduce me to everyone. Finally make things official. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the evidence spread across the table. The photos, the screenshots, the receipts. Her face went through the same progression as Daniel's had. Confusion, realization, panic. What is this? She asked, but her voice had lost all its confidence. This, I said, standing up to face her directly, is the evidence that's going to ensure you get absolutely nothing when I divorce my husband. Linda stepped beside me, creating a united front that must have been terrifying to face. This is also the moment where you learn that you picked the wrong family to mess with. Chloe looked at Daniel desperately. Daniel, tell them this is crazy. Tell them about us, about our plans. Our plans, I interrupted. You mean the plans where you called him a walking ATM? The plans where you said the sex wasn't even good, but the money made it worthwhile? Chloe's mouth fell open. She looked at Daniel, who was staring at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I never said that, she stammered. I held up my phone. Would you like me to play the voice message where you laughed about it with your friend? The one where you talked about bleeding him dry and moving on to the next target? The fight went out of her completely. Without another word, she turned and walked out of Linda's house. We heard her car start, heard her drive away into the rainy night. She never contacted Daniel again. The family dinner ended with Daniel leaving alone, his tail between his legs, his plans in ruins. The rest of the family stayed to support me, to make sure I knew that the end of my marriage didn't mean the end of my place in their hearts. Mark hugged me on his way out. You're still our sister, he said simply. Tom shook his head in disgust. I can't believe he chose that over you. Sarah, Daniel's sister-in-law, whispered, call me if you need anything. Anything at all. But it was Linda who walked me to my car. Linda who made sure I knew I wasn't facing this alone. I'm proud of you, she said, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. Not just for standing up for yourself tonight, but for handling this whole situation with such grace. I started crying then, all the emotions I'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. I'm scared, Linda. I don't know how to do this alone. She pulled me into the kind of hug that made me understand why Daniel had turned out as well as he did before he lost his way. Linda had raised him with love, with values, with strength. It wasn't her fault he'd thrown it all away. You're not alone, she said firmly. You have a family, Jessica. It might look different now, but you have a family. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. With all the evidence Linda and I had gathered, Daniel had no choice but to accept a settlement that protected my interests completely. The house, the investments, the business assets I'd contributed to. Everything stayed exactly where it belonged. Chloe was nowhere to be found. Rumor had it she'd moved on to her next target, some rich guy she'd met at a different gym. Daniel had been used and discarded, just like he'd planned to do to me. But the real victory wasn't financial, it was personal. I'd discovered that I was stronger than I ever imagined. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. Linda and I are closer now than we ever were when I was married to her son. She calls me every week, invites me to family events, includes me in holiday celebrations. When people ask if it's weird maintaining a relationship with my ex-mother-in-law, I just smile. Linda didn't choose sides between her son and her daughter-in-law. She chose the side of what was right. She chose love over loyalty, justice over family politics. And Daniel. He tried to contact me a few months after the divorce was finalized. He wanted to explain, to work things out, to convince me that he'd made a mistake. I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Looking back now, almost a year later, I realize that the betrayal was the best thing that could have happened to me. Not because I enjoyed the pain. I wouldn't wish that heartbreak on anyone. But because it revealed truths I never would have discovered otherwise. I learned that I was capable of standing up for myself in ways I never imagined. I learned that real family is chosen, not inherited. I learned that sometimes the people who surprise you the most are the ones who show up when you need them most. But most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't always about destroying someone else. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed yourself. Linda taught me that. She showed me that you could be hurt without becoming bitter, betrayed without becoming vengeful, abandoned without losing your sense of worth. Every week when we have lunch together, she tells me stories about Daniel as a child, about the values she tried to teach him, about her disappointment in who he became. But she never asks me to forgive him. She never suggests we try to work things out. Instead, she asks about my life, my work, my plans for the future. She treats me like the daughter she gained, not the daughter-in-law she lost. If you're listening to this story because you're going through something similar, let me tell you something. You are not alone. Betrayal feels like the end of the world, but it's actually the beginning of your real life. The life where you know exactly who you can trust. The life where you understand your own strength. The life where you surround yourself only with people who choose to stand by you when everything falls apart. My name is Jessica Thompson. I was betrayed by the man I loved, manipulated by the woman who stole him, and saved by the mother-in-law who refused to let me face it alone. And that's a story I'll never regret telling. Because sometimes, the most unexpected alliances create the most powerful victories. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the most lead you to the people who will love you the best. And sometimes, when you think you've lost everything, you discover you've actually found yourself. For more exciting videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share. If you want powerful narratives, strong emotions, and the sweet taste of justice, this is your place.